Hello, I'm that geeky gamer, and welcome to my show. Say, do you like games like Guitar Hero and Rock Band? Well, did you know that before those games came along, several other games, labeled as rhythm games, kind of laid the groundwork?
One of the earliest examples of such a game was Parappa the Rapper, and due to its success, several other games with a similar style soon began popping up. Games like Buster Groove, Space Channel 5 and Frequency. These games varied in both quality and popularity, but most of them managed to get a fairly decent fanbase. However, some of these games also became rather obscure and only got picked up by the most curious of gamers.
Such is the case with today's subject. It's definitely not the most obscure game in existence, but since it was originally produced in a fairly limited amount of copies, at least in Europe and North America, it is considered to be somewhat of a cult classic. In any case, why don't we just take a look and find out what's what? Let's put on our best concert faces, and let's get ready to rock out with Gitaroo Man.
So let me start by explaining just what this game is all about. As I mentioned, Gitaroo Man is a so-called rhythm game, where the goal is to play various songs as perfectly as possible. In this particular game, the way this is done is to press the correct button at the right time, in addition to pushing the left joystick in the right direction. Okay, so maybe I need to go into a bit more detail. Each level of this game is basically split up into 3 phases. In the first phase, called the charge phase, the player tries to fill as much as possible of his power gauge, which is kinda like a life bar. In order to do this, the player must use the left analog stick to trace the so-called trace line, while also pressing the circle button when a so-called attack point enters the center of the screen. The circle button must then be pressed until the so-called phrase bar ends. Based on how well the player manages to trace the trace line and how accurately the circle button is pressed, the power gauge will fill up.
There, that cleared everything up, right?
Okay, so maybe it still sounds a little confusing, but it really isn't. Basically, you have to press the circle button at the right time, while also moving the left analog stick in the indicated direction. Anyway, the second phase, called the battle phase, is split up into 2 modes, the attack mode and the guard mode. The attack mode basically consists of the same thing as in the charge phase, the only difference being that instead of charging your power gauge, your accuracy determines how much damage you deliver to your opponent. You also take damage every time you make a mistake. In guard mode, the player has to dodge the opponent's attacks by pressing one of the 4 face buttons, triangle, square, circle or cross, as their icons reach the center of the screen. If you're accurate, you take no damage, but if you miss, you lose power. The third and final phase is appropriately enough called the final phase. Here, the objective is, again, pretty much the same as in the charge phase or the attack mode of the battle phase. Your accuracy determines how much damage is delivered to your opponent, but your mistakes also cause you to take damage. In fact, I think mistakes cause you more damage in this phase than any of the others, so accuracy is more important than ever here.
And that's the basic gist of the game. It's not at all complicated, and some may think it's overly simplistic, but then again, these sort of games aren't really about complex controls or varied gameplay. No, these games are usually more about perfecting your skills, if any, and doing so to some hopefully decent, if not downright awesome tunes.
For instance, Parappa the Rapper had some pretty good and memorable hip-hop songs.
Kick, punch, it's all in the mind. If you wanna test me, I'm sure you'll find.
Frequency had some original electro/dance tracks from various artists. And Space Channel 5 had some, unique tunes as well. So what about Gitaroo Man? How does its music stack up? Well, why don't we just listen to it and find out?
Okay, wait a minute, stop the music. That wasn't really all that good, was it? I mean, it wasn't horrible, but I don't think it warrants me wearing these. Nah, these standard regular Oz glasses are more than enough for this.
Now before you get the wrong idea, the music in this game is not bad, far from it. Oh, it's varied, very varied, but for the most part the music is actually pretty damn awesome, at least in my opinion. It's just that the opening song, the very first song you hear when starting up this game, isn't exactly one of them. As I said, it's not a horrible tune, but it is fairly bland and the vocals are just annoying. It just doesn't give you a very good first impression. Thankfully, the rest of the tunes are, for the most part, very enjoyable and ranging in style. There's a blues track, a J-pop rock track, and even a freaking reggae track. Then of course, there are the rock and metal tracks.
You know what? I take it back. The music in this game is more than worthy of these.
Seriously, you tell me this music doesn't rock. I dare you. Actually, before we move on, there is one more track I want to talk about, and that's the game's love theme, or ballad if you will. It's called the Legendary theme, and it's extremely good. I just love this theme. I don't usually get all that emotional about music, but this is one of those rare tunes that actually moves me a bit every time I hear it. No, that doesn't mean that I start bawling my eyes out whenever it's played. I just mean that it gives me chills and goosebumps. In a good way. I just think it's a pretty emotional song with a lot of feeling to it. The acoustic version in particular is very nice to listen to, but both versions are, in my opinion, masterpieces.
So the game definitely aces it in terms of music, but what about the rest of the experience? What about the story, graphics, voiceovers and so on?
Well, let's take a look at the story first. Gitaroo Man tells the story of U1, a fairly pathetic boy who is always made fun of by his rival, Kazuya. No, not that Kazuya, you idiot. This Kazuya. How could you even think? Never mind. Anyway, you might be wondering exactly what U1 and Kazuya are rivaling about, and well, it's not a what, but a who. You see, U1 is hopelessly in love with Pico, but she spends most of her time with Kazuya, which U1 obviously isn't too happy about. So, when he's not being pushed around by Kazuya and ignored by Pico, U1 spends his time with his talking pet dog named Puma. Puma is the one who teaches U1, or rather the player, about how to play the game, and while we're on that subject, let me just stop here for a moment to talk a little bit about the game's tutorial.
Hold on a sec. I just gotta get the right equipment for this. It's fucking awful!
Don't get me wrong, I love this game, but the tutorial does just about everything wrong. It explains everything through text and or voiceovers, it doesn't let you try anything until Puma does so first, and it just goes on for way too long. Not a good way to start off the game, guys. So anyway, after the tutorial, U1 gets confronted by some sort of diaper-wearing, axe-wielding baby devil.
Well, obviously.
Yeah, this is pretty weird, but trust me, it gets much weirder. I guess you could just attribute this game's weirdness to the fact that it's Japanese, but I digress. In any case, as the baby devil, named Panpierce, is about to attack U1, Puma suddenly transforms into some sort of dog speaker system called Puma AC-30 and throws a special guitar-like instrument called the Gitaroo over to U1. When U1 catches the Gitaroo, it transforms him into the legendary and ludicrously dressed Gitaroo Man. I mean, what the hell is that? Some sort of exoskeletal uniform with an exposed midriff and a helmet shaped like some sort of creature with wings? Oh yeah, that just screams legendary hero, doesn't it? I don't really care, and I guess it fits the style of the game, but seriously, this costume is pretty damn weird. So after defeating Panpius and a flying UFO-shaped synthesizer named Flying O, Puma explains to Yuan that he is actually Gitaroo Man, the last in a line of legendary heroes of a planet called Planet Gitaroo. Why he never explained any of this to Yuan before, I have no idea, and I especially don't know why he waits to explain it until the second time Yuan gets attacked. For that matter, why doesn't Yuan ask him any questions before that either?
I mean, if it was me, I'd be like, Puma, not to be difficult or anything, but what the fuck just happened? Why are you a fucking boombox all of a sudden, and what in the name of Satan's anus am I wearing? I mean, am I dreaming or something? I mean, what the hell's going on? Just some sort of reaction.
At any rate, Yuan fights off one more enemy called Mojo King B, and then somehow receives a distress call through Puma from someone calling himself Miranda the Elder.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
He wants Gitaroo Man to come to Planet Gitaroo to free the prisoners from the evil Gravillians, which is what the creatures he's been battling are apparently called. So although Yuan is hesitant to do so, Puma somehow produces a spaceship, maybe he kept it in his anus, I don't know, shoves Yuan in it and takes off for Planet Gitaroo. The rest of the story involves Yuan or Gitaroo Man fighting off a few more Gravillians, while also encountering Kira, a girl who looks exactly like Pico, and Zoe, the leader of the Gravillians, who looks exactly like Kazuya. Gitaroo Man eventually saves the day, of course, and Yuan gains the confidence to stand up to Kazuya, and therefore gets to spend more time with Pico.
So the story isn't really anything all that epic, but then again, did you really expect it to be? I mean, for something like this, the story is more than adequate. Now, before I wrap up this review, allow me to take a quick look at a few more elements.
For starters, I have to say that the voice acting in this game is horrendous.
Why is it that everywhere we go, the same kind of jerks say the same kind of things?
Now, part of this is probably due to poor translation or localization, but still, the voice actors, at least in the English version, are just horrible and annoying. Also, maybe it's just my perverted mind, but why does the "you win" voices sound like something from a phone sex line?
You win!
Seriously, what the hell? This game is clearly aimed at younger gamers, so what's the deal? It's kinda creepy, isn't it?
Oh yeah!
Ooh, pluck my strings. Pluck them good, you naughty boy.
Creepy, right? I don't know, maybe I'm just a sick bastard who needs to get laid. Finally, I also have to say that although the controls are very smooth and easy to learn, they do strain your wrist quite severely. Now, that might just be me, but I don't think it is. As far as I know, I don't hold the controller in any particularly uncomfortable or strenuous way, so I don't see any reason why I should feel any more strain than anyone else. In any case, my wrist was definitely sore after I played this game, so I guess I should just be happy with the fact that it is a fairly short game. You won't get much more than a couple of hours worth of gameplay out of the main game, depending of course on how good you are, but due to its game style, it doesn't really feel like it's too short. Besides, there are a few extra modes you can play, like the versus mode and the master levels, which are a much bigger challenge by the way.
And that's pretty much all I have to say about Gitaroo Man. It's pretty damn good.
It has a few issues here and there, but for the most part it's a very enjoyable game with some truly awesome music. Yeah, it's a bit short and the voice acting is truly horrendous, but the graphics are nice, the animations are pretty decent, and the gameplay is very straightforward and fun.
If you ever get the chance, I would definitely encourage you to check this game out, especially if you like rhythm games. At any rate, I hope you enjoyed this review, and I hope you check back next week for a new episode. Now, if you don't mind, I have to go do something about this wrist. Bye!